Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our last episode of the Aquarium's Online Academy today. My name is Kaya, and I'm coming to you live from the Aquarium of the Pacific in front of our Shark Lagoon. And I'm super excited because sharks are my favorite animal here at the aquarium, and that is what our program is all about, sharks and their conservation. Now, while you're watching, if you have any questions, please feel free to text those in or observations that you would like to share while you're watching. Our number is 562-286-1838. Or if you're watching this later and you still have questions, please feel free to email us at live@lbaop.org. And we would love to hear from you. Thank you so much. So let's get started thinking about sharks. What I wanted to focus on first is actually the diversity of sharks that are out there, because there are about 450 species of sharks, which are a lot. And I found that when most people think of sharks, like go ahead, start to think of a shark. What is the image that comes to you to mind? Usually, people think of a really big shark, maybe one that has lots of teeth. Maybe we can show an image of a typical shark that people think of somewhere there, or you can just continue to think about it. But the reality is, oh, well, that's a shark that we definitely have here at the aquarium. So here's a great example. This is a blacktip reef shark and is a pretty typical looking shark. It's got those teeth there, and it's about 6 to 8 feet long. But most sharks out there of the 450 species are only about 3 feet long. So that's much smaller than most people realize, like our bamboo sharks here at the aquarium. So we have a few species here. And what else do you notice in this picture? Are they swimming around doing lots of things? I mean, this is a picture, so no, but they are all in a pile here, right? So one of the reasons they're in a pile is because they're trying to protect themselves. This is a defense mechanism. So they are not a huge species of shark, and there's other predators out there that would eat them. So in fact, there's lots of things that would eat them. So one of the things they do is they will group all together so they look like a larger animal from afar, hopefully to prevent other things from eating them. So this is a great example of a small species of shark in a tropical environment. We also have some smaller species that are off our coast here. So if you were to go swimming a little bit further offshore, if you were able to dive or go snorkeling, we have some sharks, small sharks that you might be able to find, like, for example, a leopard shark, just like this one. Yay! So why do you think this is called a leopard shark? If you were to make some observations here, what do you notice? Well, it's covered in all of these spots, right? Just like a leopard, which is how it's got its name. And again, this is a small shark. It's only about 4 feet at its maximum length. So really not that large and, very comfortable with people swimming near it. In fact, most sharks actually try to get away from people. This is also a really great view of its gills, how it breathes underwater. So those are two smaller species of shark. Now I'm actually thinking of a really large shark, the largest fish in the ocean, our whale shark. Are you familiar with this one? So this is, again, the largest species of fish. They have been recorded at up to 60 feet long, which is huge, bigger than a bus. Yeah, so here's a great picture. We can see it's a few cars after that bus. Most of them are usually recorded about 30 to 40 feet, but they can get to be this big. But what do you think this fish eats? So even though it's the largest fish out there, they're what we call filter feeders. So they are not huge predators like some other sharks out there. They just take in huge gulps of water and filter out all of the small things that are swimming in the water, like plankton. And they have very special features around their gills called filter pads, which are similar to gill rakers that filters out all of the food that they want to eat. So the largest fish out there actually eat some of the smallest things in the planet. So not a predator at all. They're considered gentle giants. Lots of people have been known to snorkel with them. So even though it's a huge fish and shark, it is not a predator in the way that we might think of. And there are actually a few other species of sharks that are filter feeders. We typically spend a lot of time thinking about our whale sharks like this. But if you've ever heard of a basking shark, whoa, So that would scare me a little bit if I saw it in the ocean. However, we can see right through it. And do you guys see any big scary teeth there? Not so much, right? So those are their modified gills, basically, and so they do have gill rakers on their gills. So gills again is what help. Oh, here's another great image. Looks like a very hungry shark right there. But again, it's not trying to hunt anything. Instead, they're just going through the water and opening up their mouth, and as water passes through, they're filtering out anything that's in there. So this is another large species. I'm not 100% sure how big they get, not as big as the whale shark. But again, its diet is entirely small things like plankton that they can find. So again, another example of a shark that is not a predator. Now, speaking of sharks that are not predators, there is another shark I'm thinking of. See, I love sharks, so I'm just excited to talk about all my favorite different types of sharks out there. So these are filter feeders. But very recently, so for a long time, scientists thought that all sharks were carnivores, so only ate meat. Even these guys, since it's small, plankton is small, but it is still a living animal. Until very recently, scientists discovered a shark that actually eats plants, and it's a shark that we have here at the aquarium, and that would be our bonnethead sharks. Yay! So you might look at them and think, oh, that's a hammerhead shark. And they are in that same family, but they are a small species. And they eat seagrass. And for a long time, scientists thought, well, are they just accidentally eating seagrass as they sort of scoop things up at the bottom? And recently discovered that no, up to 60% of their diet, nutrition, actually comes from eating that grass, which is pretty amazing. So that tells us a lot, that there's a lot of research that still needs to be done in understanding all of these sharks and their diets. Now, like I said, bonnetheads are a shark that we have here at the aquarium. So if you're ever interested in maybe taking a look at them while you're at home, you can. Oh, let's watch this video again. That's great. I'm happy to watch these little bonnetheads swimming. So you can see what is all around them, swimming in a coral reef. Huh? Oh, that's okay. You can also get it's always fun to watch sharks swim. You can see how they use their fins. You can see, the way that they move their bodies. They use their tails to help propel them through the water. You can notice next time you watch some sharks swimming, hopefully we'll see it soon, you can see that they just move them side to side, whereas our whale friends out there use their tails to go up and down, just like this. So always fun to watch them. Okay, perfect. So this is our tropical exhibit, and this is a live webcam on our tropical exhibit, so you can watch it whenever you want. And I'm not seeing any sharks swimming here right now, but maybe they'll come by. But that's okay, because this is an opportunity to talk a little bit about this exhibit and what it represents out in the ocean. So this is modeled after a real place called Palau, which is in Micronesia, which is a dive site you can go to if you're lucky to. And you can see, well, what do you notice when you take a look here? What are some things that you see? So I see a ton of different types of fish. Ooh, eagle ray? I think that's an eagle ray swimming by. Oh, there's an eagle ray back there covered in spots. I see a unicorn tang. I think that's a cow nose ray right there, which is probably what was swimming by earlier. So it's a huge diversity of fish. Now, we're not seeing our sharks in here right now. Oh, there it is. Woo, there's our bonnethead. But if we were out there in Palau right now, we would actually see a ton of sharks swimming. And that is because this was the first shark sanctuary in the world, which is pretty amazing. And I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But I have a question coming in. Oh, Susan is asking, how do whale sharks count as sharks? They only eat plankton. Really great question. So to think about why whale sharks are considered sharks, we have to think about, well, what makes a shark in general? There are some shark features that we know of. So it's not their diets necessarily, but instead it's other features that they have. So for example, what do you see right here? Those are their fins, right? So whale sharks have the exact same type of fins as other sharks out there. I think if we pull up the blacktip reef shark, we can get a good view of those fins, which So here we go. So the whale shark is so big, we can't really look at those fins in that picture, but they do have those fins just like the blacktip reef shark. So they have, I think it's 7 fins all together. They've got their pectoral fins, and then the very well-known fin up top. This is called their dorsal fin. And then they have anal and pelvic fins back here, and again, their tail fins. So all of these fins aid them in swimming. Pectoral fins help them turn, kind of like airplane wings, and the dorsal fin is really used for balance. So that's one feature of sharks. Another one is how they breathe. So we saw that on our leopard shark, and we can see that here as well. So how do sharks breathe? They don't breathe like us. Instead, they use gills. So they do breathe. They're able to get oxygen out of the water using their gills. Perfect. So here's a great white shark. Again, it's really clear here, and you can also see the number of gills. So most sharks typically have 5 gill slits. There are a few exceptions to this, but almost all that we see have these 5 gill slits. And bony fish also have gills, but they just look a little bit different. With sharks, you can really see them very clearly. Like here's a Garibaldi swimming by, classic example of a bony fish, our California state fish. And if you see that, oh, he swam away. Right here, that is where their gills are, but they're covered up. They have this nice plate that keeps them safe. Shark's anatomy is a little bit different, so you can see them exposed here. Now, another feature of sharks that is much harder to show, I don't think we have any images to demonstrate this, but it's what's covering their bodies. So what's covering all fish's bodies are scales, but sharks have a very unique type. Oh, perfect. We do have an image. Thank you, Jen. Not alone in the studio here. I've got Jen and Stewie who are taking questions and helping me out with the images behind me. So these are shark scales or dermal denticles, which is kind of like a big term, but if you break it down and think of denticles, you might think of dentist, which is for our teeth. So these scales are like very specialized teeth. So they're very hard scales, really helps keep sharks safe. If you're able to come to the aquarium now that we're open and touch our bamboo sharks, you can really get a good sense of what those scales feel like. They feel almost like sandpaper. It's a very different feeling than if you were to touch any of our other fish or even our rays, which have a mucus covering all over them. So whale sharks also have those dermal denticles. So those features and a few others are how we know that they are sharks. Really great question, Susan. Thank you. Right, so let's go back to our tropical exhibit. And we can start to think a little bit about why there would be so many sharks in an area with so many fish as well. Why, if we were to go to a coral reef and see a ton of sharks, why does that mean it's healthy? And why is that a good thing? So in other words, why are our sharks important for our oceans? So I know I just spent a lot of time talking about how there are sharks that are not predators out there, but a good number of them are predators. Oh, beautiful. Here's our zebra shark swimming by. I love them. Oh, and you guys get a very rare view of one of our turtles in there. That's awesome. It's an olive ridley. All right, so most sharks are predators, and as predators are very, very important to ecosystems such as this one in the coral reef. Now, a question that we get here a lot at the aquarium is, why aren't the sharks eating all of the fish that they see? And the answer is, and this is also true for sharks in the wild, is that sharks don't have to eat in the same way that we do. Did you all eat breakfast and lunch and planning on eating dinner? We have to eat a few times a day, right? Constantly, it sometimes feels like, or at least that's how I feel. Oh, beautiful. Look at our ray. That's great. Which are very close relatives of sharks. We can talk about that in a little bit. But sharks, their metabolism is really different. So some sharks can go weeks without eating and they're just fine. A lot of times sharks will eat every other day. So they really don't need to eat as much as we do at all. And it's actually very cost effective for them to chase fish and hunt fish. So here at the aquarium, we do feed them every day. They're not hungry at all to eat any of the fish here. And in the wild, they don't have to eat as often, and there's plenty of fish for them. But when they do prey on fish, what they're doing is they're helping to keep those fish populations in control. So there's not too many fish in any given area. So if you take any of those predators out of the ecosystem they're in, what's going to happen to the fish or whatever they're eating? They're going to keep multiplying. They're just going to grow and grow and grow. And then what happens to those fish? Well, those fish have to eat, right? So a lot of times what happens or what those fish eat might be algae that's growing all over the coral, and they're helping keeping that algae down. What if the fish eat all of that algae and then they don't have any food to eat? Is that going to be good for those fish in the long run? Probably not. So then those fish run out of food, and that's going to negatively impact the fish populations, and they might start to die out. And then eventually you can have an entire ecosystem sort of collapse just because the predators, like the sharks, were taken out. Now, not all sharks are apex predators. There's plenty of small sharks, like I said, but they do all play a role in sort of maintaining those prey populations in areas like coral reefs. Another thing, so I mentioned that sharks, it's very energy, they have to use a lot of energy to hunt their food. So one thing that sharks do a lot is they will hunt sick or injured fish because those are going to be the easiest things for them to catch. Some fish are really, really fast, so you have to be fast to chase after them. So by eating the sick fish or the injured fish, that also helps maintain fish populations and helps keep those, fish populations healthy. So having sharks in our oceans is really, really important all around. They are very important for maintaining ecosystem balance, which is awesome. But unfortunately, a lot of sharks have a bad reputation, which is why it's so great that you're watching this and learning about them so we can think about how to help them. Because unfortunately, there are a number of sharks out there that are endangered. So what do you think might be some threats to sharks? So one thing that comes to my mind is unsustainable fishing practices. So if you are fishing and you're not thinking about the ways that you're doing it, then you might unintentionally harm other species. And sharks, unfortunately, can be harmed in this process. And there's actually one group of sharks, or it's not a shark, it's a ray, that I wanted to highlight if we're able to pull up some pictures of it, because it's incredibly endangered and not a lot of people are aware of it. So while we're looking for that, I see a question from Penelope, who is asking, hi, Penelope. Are sharks the only fish with special skin or unique scales? And they are not. There are other fish out there that have somewhat different types of scales than the typical fish that we think of. So sturgeons are an example of this type of fish. They have what's called scutes. And actually, turtles have scutes as well, but I know we're talking about fish. But scutes are a they're a type of scale that is almost infused with bone, so it makes them even harder and more protective. So that's another example of a fish. And we actually do have white sturgeons here as well. So if you're able to visit, then you can also touch a sturgeon and see what that feels like. Compare it to any of our sharks or rays. Okay, so while we're thinking about rays again, so believe it or not, rays and sharks very closely related. They are both considered cartilaginous fish. Here's a great picture of them here. So you can again see those gills there. And then you might notice these fins that they have right there, and those are their pectoral fins. So just like we talked about sharks having pectoral fins, rays have them too. I like to think of rays as being like a pancake shark. If you just like flatten them out, they have a lot of the same anatomy, although their tails are different, of course. So sharks use their tail fins to propel them through the water, and rays use their pectoral fins to sort of flap like this. And here's a good image of one like it was swimming at the bottom of the ocean. And unfortunately, there is a group of rays called rhino rays that are critically endangered right now. And here's a great picture of them. Can you think of why they're called rhino rays? So it's because of that big head right there. I guess people thought they kind of look like a rhino. So why is this rhino ray so endangered? So this is a coastal species, so they live in tropical areas very close to the water. So there's a couple of threats that they face. Unsustainable fishing is one, and then also any coastal development. So those are some major threats. Another threat is that, well, this isn't a direct threat, but people aren't as aware of them. So bringing awareness to the species is one really important step to building conservation around them. So that's why I'm talking about them now. So some ways that we can one other reason why they're threatened, and this is true for a lot of sharks that I want to mention, is that they take a long time to develop. So sharks take a long time to grow to their adult size. Oh, here's a great image of a little baby shark, a bamboo shark that we have here in their egg case. Sharks are also unique in the way they reproduce. They can give live birth, they can lay egg cases like this, which hatch externally, and sometimes females hold the eggs internally and they hatch inside there. So lots of ways for sharks to reproduce. But in general, especially for larger species of shark, they take a long time to reach maturity, which means if you take a lot of them out at once, those populations take a while to rebound. So that's a major threat that many sharks face, including the rhino rays. So what can we do to help these animals in general? Well, I wanted to talk about one thing that the Aquarium of the Pacific is doing, and then we can talk a little bit about maybe some things that you can do, because there's lots of things that we can do to help these animals. One thing that we've done is we've partnered with a global organization called Global Finprint. So they do research on these animals around the world. Now, how do you research a shark? Is it an easy animal to study? Not exactly, because the ocean is a pretty big place and it can be pretty hard to find sharks or really any animal out there. So what they've done is they use videos down there to capture what's happening at coral reefs. So in just a moment, oh, here we go. So before we play the video, I'm going to explain what we're looking at and then we can watch it. So this is called a BRUV, and I will remember all of the words. I always forget it. It is a baited remote underwater video. A BRUV. Yes, I did it. All right, so bait. So that's what we're seeing here in this little box. So there's lots of little fish snacks in there for all of our fish friends in this coral reef. And then you see this pole here. And then what's attached at the end is a camera. So by playing that camera, we get to see what comes up to all of these little fish snacks. So we can go ahead and play this video. Let's see what's happening here at this particular camera. So I see lots of yellow. Oh, I see a shark. Oh, it's hungry. It's coming straight for the camera. And I think that's a reef shark. I think these are all, oh, that is a very hungry shark right there rolling on the ground. That's a nurse shark. Very, very curious. And that's another shark that spends a lot of time at the bottom. Oh, another reef shark coming to investigate. We also have those here at the aquarium. Some more yellowtail, another shark out there. Ooh. Oh, I thought I was going to go up to see it. I guess not. Definitely curious. That's how I feel sometimes. Right before lunch, just ready to go for it. All right, so what did we learn even just from watching this 30-second clip? So by watching this video footage, we have volunteers that are able to count the number of animals that visited. So let's see, I can think of at least 3 or 4 that we saw. We saw the reef sharks, we saw the nurse sharks, we saw a few species of fish. So you can see, well, how many different types of animals live in this coral reef? And that gives you a good picture of how diverse it is. And typically diverse, high diversity, it means it's a healthy reef, which is what we would hope to see. And then the other thing that we can take a look at is abundance. So how many of each of those animals came by? So we saw about, 3 or 4 gray reef sharks. So that would tell us that there's likely a good population of reef sharks in that reef. So looking at the abundance of each of those animals is another way to get a good picture of the health of that coral ecosystem. So really scientists are looking at both. Now, why is that important? Why is understanding those two things important for their conservation? Well, understanding the health of those coral reefs is going to help us make policy decisions like where should our next marine protected area be? What are the areas that really need our attention to protect and define? So that's one thing. And then another reason is just by understanding the population numbers for all of those species of sharks is really going to give us a better picture of that particular species. So there's lots of reasons why, studying coral reefs and studying sharks is going to help us with our ocean conservation in general. And other ways that you can get involved is just by learning more about it. So watching this is a great first step. And you can also go to Global Finprint's website and take a look at lots of different video footage of coral reefs all around the world. Okay, so we can take our last few moments just making some observations in here. So this is our shark lagoon. And you can watch this anytime you feel like watching sharks swim, which is for me pretty much anytime ever. And what do we see in here? So one thing I'm seeing right there, so that's our Caribbean reef shark. So those are the sharks that we saw actually in that footage of the Bahamas, which is pretty awesome. And then I see this shark right here. So that's a blacktip reef shark, which is aptly named because of the black tip on its dorsal fin. And then the other shark that I saw in here earlier is our zebra shark. It's coming up right now. Get excited. We're about to have a close-up view of one of our zebra sharks. I guess I'm blocking it right there. Oh, there's one though. That's okay. Okay, so this, beautiful shark. So they are another large species of shark. They're about, I think, 9 to 10 feet are ours. So they're pretty big. But you might be surprised about their diet. So what do you think these sharks eat? So here we go. This is a baby. So cute. So one question that you might be thinking is like, wait, why is that called a zebra shark that does not have stripes? So if we were looking at an even younger zebra shark, they would be covered in stripes. And so scientists named them for when they found them when they were young and didn't realize once they got older, they became covered in spots. So their patterns do change. And I do think they are called leopard sharks in other parts of the world. So it really just depends. Okay, but if we were to take a look at its mouth, it's right here underneath, facing down. So even just by thinking about that, what do you think they eat? So they tend to eat things that they can find at the bottom of the ocean or things that are hiding in crevices in coral reefs. So they have really small jaws with lots of tiny teeth that they can use to crush things. So instead of chasing other fish or squid, which is what a lot of sharks eat, like our reef sharks that we saw swimming around earlier, they instead find things and then like crush them with their jaws. So might have noticed when they were swimming around, maybe we can go back to take a look at that and we can compare their swimming because they don't swim in the same way that our reef sharks do. They're much slower animals. Not swimming around right now, but that's okay. No sharks. No sharks are cooperating with me. Well, there we can see a reef shark. So you can see they're moving through the water pretty quickly. They're using that caudal tail to really propel them. Zebra sharks have that really long extended caudal tail, which is not so much used to help them swim. So if you're wondering about the swim patterns of any shark, looking at their fins and their shapes is a really great way to do that. Just like looking at their mouths and their mouth shapes is going to tell you a lot about what they eat and how they eat it. So again, not all sharks are these big, huge predators that we typically think of when we think of sharks. So I hope that this program will have opened your eyes to some other sharks and types of sharks that are out there and helped you understand that they are really amazing animals that are definitely in need of our protection. And there's lots of things that you can do, and watching this is just a great first step to doing that. So thank you again for watching. If you have any questions after this program is wrapped up, you can email us at live@lbaop.org, and we will be happy to take any of those questions you have. So we're done with programming for today, but you can always tune in tomorrow to watch more amazing programs here at the aquarium. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.